I'm calling this meeting of the Rappahannock County Board of Zoning Appeals to order. I guess I'll call the roll. Jennifer Matthews.
I'm here.
Alex Sharp, I'm here. David Thompson.
I'm here.
Ron Macklin.
I'm here.
Chris Bird.
Here.
Everybody's here, and Michelle Summers is our zoning administrator.
I move we adopt the agenda as,
Oh, wait, hold on, there was some.
oh, you want to add on the thing about, right. I
Well-
move to add the bill from, what's his name, Lockerbie.
Can we add that and still consider it?
Sure. I mean, if we get a majority, I guess.
You mean unanimous vote? Does it mean it'd be unanimous vote?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I just, at least for information, I want to present the bill from Lockerbie.
Okay, I move we add that under old business.
And then Chris Bird had asked if we look at the code of ethics.
I just thought, I don't want to put that on until we have a chance to read it. Very good.
What's part of it could be rules and procedures.
Could we just,
That's not a rule or procedure.
okay.
Should be.
Which code of ethics?
Okay,
It's
you,
the same one that the supervisor
Are you-
approved last year.
They didn't approve it.
and they're considering it coming up, is that right?
It's hard to know when the supervisors are going to be.
At Monday's meeting.
There's a headline for somebody. It's hard to know when the supervisors are going to do anything.
The committee has moved it towards in that direction.
Okay,
You
so
mean
Chris,
anything at all, or anything in particular?
However you want to,
Chris, are you okay if we do that at the next meeting?
sure.
Okay, so David's made a motion to adopt the agenda, adding, bringing Lockerbie's bill into it. Is there a second?
Where's that gonna go?
Old business.
I guess that'll be old business, so that'll be first. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Minutes from January 23rd.
I sent them around, nobody sent me any corrections.
Oh, you know what I did?
I didn't get them.
What?
I didn't get the minutes. You dropped me from your list. And I didn't see them on the Word docs. But I have read them.
They're all right.
And
How'd you go? Oh,
And
right here, okay.
And so,
Good draft, man.
I would like to have included in the minutes is that we had a court reporter.
Well, we didn't have it actually,
There was a court reporter
Okay.
present, paid by whomever.
right?
And,
Who is whomever?
well, it was the fellow from Manassas.
Oh, Gifford?
Give Hampshire.
Gifford.
Give Hampshire.
Okay, Gifford.
Now, that's not going to be transcribed unless it's required for the next step, is that right?
There isn't any next step because they didn't file an appeal in the 30 days is up.
Right, well,
So,
But I don't think that's
but
not
that's up
been
to them.
transcribed yet. I mean, it could be, but we haven't transcribed it.
They just take it down and they don't transcribe unless they
Right, right.
ask for it.
that's,
Okay, so
but
we're
I think
gonna-
that we should state that there was a certified transcript,
Okay.
Mr. Halbert.
All right.
And then the one thing that I would mention, we did talk about a letter to the Board of Supervisors. Was that not, I didn't see that in here.
Right, you're right. No, did leave that out. Letter and,
About, what were we doing, summarizing the decision and referring it over to
Right.
the Board of Supervisors? And then we have copies of that letter.
we do. So, okay, I'll fix
Maybe
those two things.
attach that.
Anything else?
Did you send that letter out?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Would that letter go with the minutes?
Right,
Okay.
I'll put a paragraph on there, I just forgot.
Okay.
To do the notes?
Most of the time I watch the tape, but since I already had the record of decision, I spared myself watching because
So
I
you
already
did
watched
not
it one
watch
time.
the tape?
Well, I watched it when I wrote that. I mean, I watched what, but I mean, I
Okay.
watched parts of it, but I mean, I didn't
You
watch
fast
the whole
forwarded through the good parts.
or the bad parts, depending on your point of view. But anyways, no, when I wrote the minutes, I just sort of used what I had already done because I had already looked at it.
Okay.
But I skipped over that part, and you're right, I did leave that out. So I'll write another little paragraph that after anyway, that,
So should we just resubmit these?
Well, I'll move that, we basically table them until next meeting, so.
right, I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's
And if
good.
anybody else sees any other stuff that I'm...
Okay, then, is there anything, there's nothing else then? Okay.
Next.
If somebody has
I do have a
something.
question. We verbally certified that we were in executive session, came out. Did we sign a piece of paper? I
No.
think we've done that in the past, where we've signed it, that we, I state that, blah, blah. Should we have done that? Or just our verbal,
Well, we took a roll call
Confirmation.
vote, it's in the minutes, I think
okay,
that's.
all right, that's
So
fine,
it's probably,
Yeah.
okay.
I would say I'm not your FOIA officer.
who is our
I was on the
FOIA?
table.
I'm
Ron?
back.
Gee, I forgot to wear my badge.
You have?
You don't have any thoughts on that?
Not at this point, no.
Doesn't happen.
I don't think that certification has got to be in writing.
I don't
You have
believe
to-
so.
You have to do it, you have to take a roll call vote.
It was never, when I was on the school board, it was never.
Okay, and that's all right.
I think sometimes they do it because they print it up and then that's like the cheat sheet for somebody to read the motion and read
Okay.
the certification and then they all sign it. So just a piece of paper to go at least.
Okay, good. Okay, there's no public hearing today. We don't have any applications before us of any kind. Okay, so the next item, which I asked to be added, and this is a copy of the billing for the legal fees related to, I'm assuming this is all related to
From the base, yeah.
The appeal.
appeal. And it's $2,327.50. And that covered preparations and attending the hearing, and I guess there was some after hearing information. I don't know whether we can refer this today.
Oh, we have to.
It wasn't on the agenda, or?
No, sure, we can just put it on the agenda. We can, I move that we approve the bill and send it to Mr. Curry and recommend that the supervisors pay it
From,
from,
Oh, it's from the
no.
from what, we
From
got,
which funds and what budget line?
attorney's fees.
we got an attorney's fee.
We have attorney fees in the
No?
litigation fees.
Is that BZA litigation?
In our budget.
No money in it, but
Well, we did have 5,000. That
But we
one,
probably used.
That might have been last year.
yeah.
Special appropriation.
You have the whole.
there's no money on
budget,
that
remember?
line, but there's money in the
Yeah.
category.
Especially this time of year.
Okay, well, anyway, we're gonna,
You do have additional money in your salaries line, because there was, at one point in time, the concept of $2,000 being provided for a clerk that never materialized.
What do you mean I materialized? They just didn't give it to me.
just don't pay.
It's still not gonna, so there's probably money in your entire BZA budget to cover
Yeah, that's it.
that.
And we're
Can
gonna
you do
talk,
that, or do we need to declare an emergency or something? No,
oh yeah, that would be.
You do your part of requesting it be paid, and we'll do the other half.
you'll reallocate the money.
Doesn't it have
Ultimately, it's up
to
to
be,
the
Plus, we didn't have meetings for about, from September.
We didn't have October.
So there's about
Big money.
$130 right there.
October, November, we didn't have meetings.
I thought
We did-
So if you put that together with the secretary
September.
pay, you got it.
aren't we at $50 a meeting?
I still don't know.
Third.
35 we
I thought we
were,
went
so
up to
I get to be 30.
I'm here for it.
It was 35.
Did
What?
you just cut us by $5?
Yeah,
Just what it was. You went back and
Okay.
researched it.
well, that's a typo then, because we voted to have 50, and Debbie Kaiser said she did it.
Yeah, we did.
You voted to give yourself a pay raise?
Well, we
Yeah,
voted to recommend that in the budget, and Debbie Kaiser told us she got it for us.
but we haven't
Then we
been
never got the
paid,
money.
we haven't been paid since, so we don't know.
She said she'd do that since she wasn't gonna pay us medical, health care.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember?
I made
You
that
might want to
motion
vote for a new
too.
pay
I don't
raise,
think
so it goes into the 20 budget.
Well, we're sort of at the bottom of the,
No, the planning commission's worse, they only get 25.
Actually, maybe Debbie agreed to pay the extra $5.
yeah, but she.
No, really, it was $35.
Oh, well, that's not what's in the budget now.
Well, since we didn't have those meetings the other months.
Well, we gotta pay lawyer fees.
Yeah, somebody's gotta pay the lawyer fees, right? Okay. Okay, so that's the old business, so is that official, are we voting on it?
Well,
We have a
yeah,
motion.
I make a motion that we approve the bill and send it over to Mr. Curry's office with the recommendation that be paid in full.
Is there a second? Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. I just want to say, as the only lawyer here, that I looked over the bill pretty carefully and I thought it was very
I would say,
reasonable. Because I know there were some things on there, like I know he wrote us an opinion letter and he only put down 1 hour for that. And I wrote us an opinion letter before his and I spent about 3 hours on it, so. Either he copied what I did or anyways, I thought that was all, I thought his bill was real reasonable. And considering his travel time up here, I know it's like 3 hours, so and he only charges 8 hours for coming to the meeting, which was, as I recollect,
and
3.5 hours.
And some preparation.
But I mean, the actual meeting date, he charges 8 hours, and so just the travel time is at least 5.5, I would say. He's in
Okay.
Salem, so anyways, I thought it was a very reasonable bill,
Okay,
all things considered.
okay, well, we're done with that.
Okay,
The next item, annual report.
yeah, who's this Alex Sharp?
And when-
Alex,
It's me. And when I went to put it together, I could not find any minutes for 2018. And I consulted with our secretary.
And I was unavailable.
He was unavailable, so I think.
So, but I
we
sent
have
them all to
now.
Michelle now, so.
We're getting them all straightened out.
Okay, so we're gonna get them straight, and as soon as I have those, I will assemble
Alright.
my meeting.
I noticed
My 8 years
that on
report.
board docs, we have something that's called the library. And then, so could our meeting minutes be either in the library or within a separate section that says BZA and then, you know, the running BZA current
Yeah,
events?
pictures too.
And then our archived minutes?
Can't we have one like the supervisors have?
Yeah.
Everybody kind of, you know,
The
stand.
planning commission, they have pictures.
we just do a selfie.
Do they?
Documents to be added to the library with headings for the BZA by year.
Or you could
So,
have,
and then we could have archived ones.
There it is, go, everybody smile.
we could have
Is that
an
it?
action photo also.
Provide me the photo, I'll stick that in the library too.
Really? Okay. But we could put all the minutes in this library.
Yeah, so there's been times like, I called up Michelle because I was looking for some minutes that were, I had recommended.
There's no storage limit, so, you know,
Is it the cloud?
better access, yeah, it's in the file.
And
Do the planning commission meetings, are the minutes of those, is something on there?
They aren't, they could be. The minutes are generally in the board docs meeting for the previous meeting, not always the final version.
usually
So,
not the final, that's the minute.
Yeah.
That's why.
I request that the approved edition of version be the one that we put forward. Because I mean, as you say, you can have several times that it's running because they're being tabled and so forth. But then have a section for at least the BCA because we're forward thinking, that has our current, our annual, annually our minutes and then archive for a couple of years.
And there's a procedure like someone signs it when it's a final copy?
Yeah, like, it's like you.
That's me. But then
Yes.
what happens to them after I sign it?
She puts them in the books, but,
And then it
But
goes,
just
in-
not for 2018.
I don't
because you
know.
didn't sign anything.
I didn't sign any of them.
Apparently not.
Okay.
There was a change in secretary,
Well, apparently my signature is required.
17 to 18.
It was all but August for 2018 for you to
And
sign.
what happened
They
to
go in the
those?
folder and then they go in the basement, you mold.
Oh, these are the final ones?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I won't bore everybody with signing these right now.
No.
Do it
Let's do it after the meeting.
Okay.
I have a question. The Board of Supervisors places an electronic copy in the library, not the signed copy that's scanned. And that's because the electronic copy is searchable, which is a convenience, as opposed to just being an image of the page.
But are they
So,
PDFs?
it's a PDF, but it's a searchable PDF as opposed to just a picture. So if you have,
Do we have the capability of doing that?
if we have the source document, it could be converted to
Well, I
PDF.
just send it all to, yeah, no, I send PDFs usually, but I'm not of the signed one.
But it wouldn't be signed, but you don't care about that.
Well,
Unless you
and
can-
basically there's a statement saying the signed version is in a book wherever.
Right. You know, and I think under the Records Act, I think certain, I'm not sure if BZA minutes are in, but there's a lot, are included, but there's a lot of records that are required, there's a whole section about, I mean, I know the Board of Supervisor minutes are required to be in the bound volume that's in the clerk's office, and it has to be a fireproof room. So I don't think that applies to BZA minutes. But I mean, they keep the planning commission minutes over there. But you keep our minute book, right?
Well, there is a minute book in your office.
Historical is in my office.
Through
Oh, it's in-
through 2017,
Through, you mean, from the beginning of time up to then, or?
isn't it?
Since the Ice Age.
But
We didn't have one.
but 2017 is complete, but there's nothing after that,
Yeah, well, that's
which
because
there
it's
will
not
be.
right there.
Okay, there will be.
So it's in your office?
It looks that way.
Because it was in the old office and it got moved over.
I see.
One of the, on the alternative for the written signatures is that, do we have someone who can notarize an electronic signature?
Or we could
of
do DocuSign.
The DocuSign and the
No.
electronic,
Yes? No?
Go ahead.
Okay, I mean, we can try that, because
Just let us know when you have the.
I can do DocuSign. You don't like that, do you? Okay.
He might start signing.
He's resisting, but okay, and so August is the only one we're missing?
What happened to that?
You said them on just, I didn't include them in there last time this evening.
Because I think the August ones there weren't any changes. If I vaguely recollect or the version of that.
So we
section.
just had no September, October,
Well, we didn't
or
have meetings.
or November,
Correct.
3 months, okay. Okay, so that's enough on that, right?
Yes.
The next item is rules and procedures. And David had sent around, and I think Michelle had sent it around earlier, a couple of other counties. There was Albemarle County, Fairfax County, what were the other ones? Manassas?
No, I don't remember, maybe Gloucester.
Elmore, Gloucester.
I never even heard of that. until
Wasn't
Gary
Manassas-
Kerr came here and
wasn't
now
Manassas-
copy all what they're doing for strange reasons. Which he may think that's a terrible idea, maybe that's why he left, because none of it was working out too good.
Oh, that's where you're from, it's Gloucester.
That's where I work.
That's how that goes.
Well, and I'm thinking one thing we should do, probably since this came up, is when we nominate the procedure
Right.
for nominating the planning commission member. So we get that done in December before the supervisors meeting in January.
Did I put that in?
I don't know.
Oh, I
No,
put
it's
it in gray,
Okay.
didn't I?
Yeah, I don't
That's
know
why
if I
it's
got
in
that
gray.
copy.
It's in gray, but it
Well,
indicates
that's
that
why,
it's,
I mean, that's what's there, so that's why I put it like that, so we can discuss it. I agree with that, we ought to- I guess that's what they're gonna do.
And then I just read through, I mean, a couple of the things that had come up. One was, we've talked about special meetings, and most of them talk about special meetings. Are we allowed to do special?
I don't think so, I mean, I looked into it, and the, 15.2-2308 specifies the powers of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and there's several cases that say anything that's not in there, we don't have the power to do. Like adopt an ethics code is not in there, but anyway, as far as having special meetings, it only says regular meetings. It says you can have regular meetings and you can set a schedule of the regular meetings, and it specifically mentions regular meetings a number of times. But if you compare that to like the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors, there are code sections that specifically say how and, well, that they can have special meetings and how they're to be called. And so, I mean, for what it's worth, my opinion is that, the rules of statutory construction are, it's all in Title 15.2, so if one section or group of sections has a specific provision for that, and the one about the BZA doesn't have a provision for special meetings, then my interpretation is you can't have them. I think that's we've
But
had some meetings where
we have it in there.
we've had work sessions.
Well, I don't know, we had, like the last year when we were discussing the tourist home thing, we continued our regular meeting to the date we wanted to have the work session. So, we didn't really call it a work session, we call it a continuation of the regular meeting. We can do that, but I don't think we can have a special meeting. Because it doesn't say so. I guess if the other sections about the other bodies were silent, maybe we could say by inference we can, but I mean, since it specifically uses the term regular meetings and doesn't have any corresponding provisions about special meeting, I don't think you can do it. So I think I took that out, proposed to take it out. It did have something in here about it.
Because we did have special meetings.
Yeah, I know, it was in there at some point in time, I can't remember if it's in the zoning ordinance, but I don't think so.
And then something that I found interesting in Albemarle County and maybe in these others, and this has come up before, if you have a vote to recommend or to approve a permit based on some conditions, and that fails to pass,
Right?
can you bring up another motion to approve with different conditions? And that,
Right after
right
that, at the same.
at the same meeting.
Sure.
Sure, okay. Well, that has not been clear. Did you have?
Well, what is
No, not with
the,
that, but I'm still back on the other one, because it says in 15.2-2308, it says the board may make, alter, or rescind rules and forms for its procedures consistent with ordinances of the locality and the general laws of the Commonwealth.
right? Where are you reading, what section?
It's the one you quoted.
2308, 15.2-2308.
It's in the state code.
Oh, you're reading the state code, not the rules, okay, yeah.
So we could have special sessions, workshops, continuance.
Where does it say that?
May make, alter, or rescind rules and forms.
Well,
Where it's
rule, that's not a rule,
procedure.
you can't, in other words, but the rules have to be consistent with, first of all, the zoning ordinance, and the zoning ordinance has to be consistent with the state code. So you can't, so that's what I'm saying, the state code is what says about special and regular meetings for the other bodies like the planning commission and the board of supervisors. They're specifically allowed, so if the state, 2308 doesn't specifically say about anything about regular meetings. I mean, I told them all, at some point I made a list, I think actually for you, that had a
We've talked
list,
about that.
that had a list of all the different boards and commissions, and there's about 10 of them, I think, where there's a specific provision, you know, most of them are state boards and commissions that are allowed to have special meetings, and about how they're called by the chairman or by any two members or whatever, that's what it usually says. But there's no corresponding provision for the Board of Zoning Appeals. So the inference is, we're not allowed to have them.
I mean, it's only ever come up once.
I mean, why, I mean, if you think about it, why would we have what would be the reason for a special meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals?
You mean that we couldn't just have it right before or at the main meeting?
Well, we have a regular monthly meeting, and generally speaking, we're doing the night, except we have an advertised public hearing, but that's always set at a regular meeting. So what would be the possible or conceivable reason for the Board of Zoning Appeals to have a special meeting?
Well,
The only thing I can think of would be if we're in that, say, the 90-day time frame, and for whatever reason, we're
Well, then
not
you
going to
could-
get,
okay.
we're going
We could continue our meeting then.
But
If I know that.
I'm thinking, like, even if we have a scheduled meeting, and as, last Wednesday, there's a snowstorm, and the meeting has to be canceled, but you're up against the wall on a time frame, and you need to
Well, believe it or
call a
not,
special meeting in
you
order
know,
to make that.
I got into that, there's actually a case, and the name of it I know is Tran, is the one, I forget what county it's in, it's Tran versus somebody or another, it's about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 8, where that exact provision, by the way, our zoning ordinance still says 60 days, but the state code was amended to say 90 days. Anyway, in the Tran case, they didn't do whatever whatever it was, within the 90 days. And the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, because it can just put whatever interpretational words it wants, even though there's a bunch of cases that say shall means mandatory, they said in whatever section of the code it is about the 90 days, shall there only means like it's a suggestion. It's not, you don't really have to meet the 90-day rule, especially if the parties agree to an extension.
Is this on an appeal or is
It was a
this?
Supreme Court decision
No,
about
no,
a
is
meeting.
this 90 days applies to hearing an appeal,
Hearing an appeal, yeah.
Decision on it.
And I,
rendering a decision on it.
Right.
Yeah.
so it really, and because I've had that come up, and I remember Peter, when he was county attorney, I brought it up at some point or another, well, if we did that, this or that, were we gonna meet the 90-day thing? And he said, that's where I found out about the case. So the 90 days really isn't mandatory.
Okay.
Could we have a clause where we would say if the meeting is canceled due to weather, that it would be held?
Well,
the
arguably then,
following week?
it's not the, I guess we could, I mean, arguably, that would still be the rescheduled regular meeting.
Right,
It
so
wouldn't
we,
be a special meeting.
so we can reschedule a regular meeting without holding a
Sure.
meeting, without holding a meeting.
Well,
Because the meeting would
I don't
not-
think, well, I don't know.
Would it have to be advertised?
It depends on what we're doing at the meeting. I mean, I think, honestly, I think the answer is no. If you don't have a quorum, because that's in here somewhere about what means a continued meeting.
But if the
Continued meeting is one that you started the meeting, or a continued public hearing. If you started the meeting, or you started the hearing, and then either you didn't finish, or it started to snow, or,
Well, that's the meeting started. But I'm saying
Okay,
if it
but if you
started-
never have the meeting, we can't change that schedule that we adopted last month without a vote.
So you couldn't.
So I
say-
don't think you could do it without a quorum, and if you can't have a special meeting, I don't think you can do it.
Do we have
I think you just have to wait for the next month.
possibility of having an electronic vote
There's,
for things like
is that
whether?
the state code? Because I didn't.
I think you can do that, but it can't.
There's something in there, I don't know if this was all gonna come up, but there's something in here about.
Glasses.
Put your glasses,
The
right?
answer is no.
They
What?
look pretty
Answer
good
no.
on them.
What?
You
Like-
can't have telephone vote.
Not talking.
No, there's some about inclement weather. There's something that you can do, have an electronic meeting, I think, if the weather's bad.
Not to have a meeting, but just to have a affirmation that yes, it's canceled or postponed to another day. You can't do that?
We did something on another group that would allow that, and apparently you cannot have a tiebreaker vote cast remotely. But you could, no, seriously.
No, I know that you cannot have a meeting and have someone at a distance and, part of the group here and part of the group there, but I was just wondering about a open email affirming
Okay,
that the
well,
weather's
maybe
bad.
Where it is in the Freedom of Information Act, where it says, it's in, I don't have, you have a computer, don't you? Can you look at it?
With me. Oh,
Can you look up 2.23707? It's the same thing about the electronic, I think it's 3707, I'm pretty sure.
who's he talking to?
37.
Gary,
Oh.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's something in there, maybe it's either in 7 or maybe 808, that says when you can have an electronic meeting. And one of the reasons you can have it is if somebody can't make it to the meeting because of weather or some kind of an emergency.
It's very narrow.
Hmm?
It's very narrow.
I can't remember exactly what it says.
Okay. Well, we can look that up.
Okay, well, we're not gonna do this tonight, so I'll look it up and.
It's 2.2.
Huh? 2.2, that's right.
And then one thing that was interesting in Fairfax County is they have something that you need more of a majority to overturn a planning commission recommendation of denial. That was in there, I don't know why.
I don't know how they get away with that, that's not in the state code. I don't think
No, that's
legal.
not, but you needed
State code overrides
you needed a more of a majority to.
supermajority.
And then the Fairfax, I guess you looked at their appeal application.
Yep.
That seemed to be pretty good.
Well, we sort of adapted when the winter was.
Okay.
I put a copy of the one that we.
Oh, okay.
Have you
Wow.
told me that? Where?
I only got one. Oh,
And then, are we notifying the court when one of our positions comes up,
Yeah.
30 days in advance?
Yep.
When did we do that last? 5 weeks ago?
You know, when Bill Anderson, when he, I don't know, it hasn't happened since
Oh,
I
okay.
got on the board, but I wasn't secretary then. But that, but
Okay.
you came on because Bill resigned, not because his term was. You know,
You
that's
filled
why,
his term.
that's why the terms are staggered, but apparently
They unstaggered.
someone known as the governor, forgot to do it numerous years in a row, and I didn't track that all down, but like, I know that, you, all four of you, your term all expires within like a month of each other. Maybe not you now, because you got reappointed, but,
We all got reappointed.
yeah, but the last time you got reappointed, well, actually Jennifer's term had expired a long time ago, like about 2 years before I got on the board, but nobody notified the judge, so then she got reappointed, and he reappointed her for another 5-year term. So then, but you three.
So we're not staggered.
But you three, yeah, you're within two, either all three, or one's in, 2 of them are in September and one's in October. They're all lumped together, and so there's no staggering, and I sort of said something to the judge one time, like, well, why don't you sort of kind of fix it? Anyway, he didn't want to do it.
The judge.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you fix it now, because you'd have to go back and see who
You just have to
overstayed their.
start staggering.
In other words, when people's terms actually were up, they didn't, when they got reappointed, when John McCarthy finally got around to telling the judge about it, he just reappointed them for 5 years from the date of the reappointment, not 5 years from the date when their previous term had expired, and that's how it got all messed up. So, anyway, but yeah, we do that. I
Okay.
guess I'm doing it now.
So basically, the nomination to the planning commission, you,
Has to be back in, okay, that's why I had that highlighted, okay, so we'll do that at the December meeting.
what else is there? Anything else?
Well, I moved some things around, I don't know. I just sort of, this one thing about public hearings, I just moved, it was sort of repetitious. I think that was,
Is that the latest? I'm not sure when that came.
F. I moved F down to sort of where it belongs. I mean, I put everything about filing the applications, and then I moved the hearings and all that business about the advertising and the hearings down to where it sort of belongs, where I thought it belonged. I mean, I moved it down to E, legal notice of meetings.
Oh, so I've got an older version.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll review that for the next time.
Okay, anything else? You had a bunch of comments?
I sat there and read it, and it was, you know, and got confused at times, and that's when I started sort of making notes or whatever, but, let's see. Oh, even in looking at the other ones also, is that, our procedures don't have a job descriptions in them
At all.
at all, which the other localities do. They define what its positions are, you know, prior to the
That's a
election,
good idea.
in that area for the elections of officers. And then, I mean, and my suggestion is we make it a whole separate line for the planning commission
Well, why don't we make it?
nomination, and that goes on another line that in December, we will, you know, we will do
Yeah, because
that.
that's not really an officer. You want to have.
It's not an officer, no.
You want to have like section 1, officers, and who they are and what they do, and then section 2 will be election of officers.
Right.
And then section 3 will be the planning commission rep,
Yeah,
and how that's done separately, right?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, gotcha. I think that's a great idea. I mean, I didn't want to change these too much. I mean, I just sort of hit the spots that I thought we had some issues with. I mean, if I was writing these, I would probably do it a whole lot different.
You have anything else,
But
Ron?
we do say
Hold on,
special
hold on,
meetings,
hold on. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Linda.
special meetings may be convened by the chair or quorum from time to time for on-site inspection of property involved in an applicant or appeal to the BZA or to consider procedural or other matters affecting the work of the BZA. Is there another word that we could use instead of special meetings? Because a long time ago, we did meet on site, where they had.
Well, now,
a building or something
that
like.
might have been before the Freedom of Information Act was going down, because that's been around since, what, 68 or the early 70s. I think the problem with any of that is that if more than, a meeting is defined in the Freedom of Information Act as any meeting of either a quorum or 3 or more, whichever is less. So if 3 members of the Board of Zoning Appeals go out to inspect a property together, that's the transaction of public business, I would say, and you have to give a FOIA notice. If you go out there, if 3 people go at the same time, you gotta give a notice. And you gotta send it out to the email list and all that stuff, because that's a meeting.
So what if we?
So that's illegal. If you go to it, if you
What
go
if we-
1 or 2 or.
What if we did that, then could we do that?
Honestly, I don't think you can. I think you have to, if you wanna, like, if we're having a meeting and there's an applicant sitting here and we get to some point from looking at the pictures or whatever, I'm not sure what the circumstances would be, we feel like we have to go. I don't know, we have to go out there and look, we have to continue the meeting until a date, or a certain time, give notice that we're all gonna go out there and look at it, either convene here or adjourn the meeting or something, but you can't, I don't think you can just have a special meeting to go do that without, because you have to give notice for one thing. And that's sort of the problem of having a special meeting, you have to give notice.
Sure, okay.
And so that could be a problem. All right, what else did you have?
I was gonna say, it's a bunch of picky unit stuff or whatever, but maybe you and I can just sit down and
Yeah, why don't we
go
do
through
that?
it and, rather than.
All right, and then we'll bring back another draft. I don't think any of this is critical.
Yeah. and-
Chris, anything you?
It has been brought up to me that it might be good to have some mechanism for transmitting board concerns to the planning commission, and perhaps including that into the meeting as on the agenda if that
Right.
were needed. If it's not needed, there doesn't have to be
Like
that.
a standing report,
Pardon me?
a standing report.
Not so much as basically, if there are concerns by members of the board that should be transmitted to the planning commission, it would be nice to talk about it at a BZA meeting, and then I would be instructed to go and take
And then
it.
you would also be bringing in
And
info.
I could bring the stuff back.
And that could be in the job description of the
Right.
position.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's do something like that.
Okay.
Agendas.
Now, all right, well, I'll get with Ron and we'll put input whatever he's got, and then we'll bring back
Just
and
put it
then
on
do
next
this stuff.
month.
Right.
Is that enough on the rules? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so next item is the budget. And Jennifer, you gave us some historical data?
Yes, some historical data.
That's it?
Can I use my
No,
glasses?
that's the. I don't know. I don't have
The
that.
major things are the mega salaries that we receive, which we've already had a discussion. Yeah, it's $30, right?
It's 35.
See how it went from 1,800
It's
to
30, you were paying
38?
30 last year.
Yeah, I thought I got short.
But this has 3,800 as
I'm gonna
the.
trade places with Lockerbie.
2,000 is
Then I get $2,000 a meeting instead of 30.
But if we were 30 per meeting times 12, that would be 1,800.
Plus 2,000 is 38.
Oh, I see.
No, 180.
So,
Oh, you mean,
so
150.
the salaries, and we said add a clerk, and so that's 1,800. So was $2,000 budgeted for a secretary?
Yes.
In FY19, yeah. And 18, I think.
So does that carry
Did you get
forward?
paid?
no,
It was budgeted for a clerk.
It was someone to write minutes, correct?
That's it.
Basically. But he's doing that, so we didn't hire somebody.
It was in the budget. You want to pay him $2,000? I prefer a vote.
what?
I mean, and one of the things that we could look at is, do we, you know, is it so many dollars per month or per meeting so that, is it $50 to get the notices out? Is it $100 to write the minutes? Is it something like that, so that if we only have 2 meetings, he doesn't get, the clerk would not get $2,000, but we get $300 or whatever.
But you're willing to donate your potential pay to?
Well, I gotta tell you, I mean,
Because he was such a.
I undertook to do it, and then
It's a lot of work.
it's a lot of work, and I mean.
I've been
for me-
secretary so many times.
Well, I mean, really, seriously, to do the minutes usually takes at least, if it's like, even a meeting like this, it takes at least an hour. And like a meeting like the last time, like the last thing without appeal, between all the correspondence that went back and forth between the council and I had to transmit stuff to the board, and I mean, I bet I spent 8 hours on that meeting before I ever got here. To the actual meeting, so, and then writing up all the stuff afterward, the letter drafted for Alex, for the board, I mean, that was a good hour and a half to do all that.
So I think
And then
that,
the minutes on top of that.
Okay.
so I believe that maybe we should have items where if it's drafting minutes or transcribing or something like that, so that we could have up to $2,000, let's say, just a number, but then certain items with a particular cost, because if we only met 9 times last year?
Mm.
No, maybe 7 times, 7 or 8 times.
Yeah, but that was an unusual, I think when we did that number, it was $150 a meeting is what we talked about.
Was that what we're, cause I couldn't remember how we came to that.
I'm pretty sure, because that came out to 1,800 and then somebody rounded it up.
So I was gonna suggest, you already have a pretty good mechanism to tailor the pay to how many meetings you have, that's by paying per meeting.
That's
And
right.
so if you think there's a differentiation between the secretary and the other members, then you should just have a different per meeting pay for the secretary.
But he's indicating he may not want to spend the time, is that right? Or you-
Well, I mean, I may not want to do it without getting paid. No, I mean, I don't mind.
It's a lot of
doing it.
work.
It's just, it's a lot of work.
Time's money, and we're not getting paid anything for sitting here.
There seems absolutely no reason not to pay.
Well, yeah, I
If we're
could
gonna,
think of
if
a
we
couple
don't pay him, we'll pay somebody else.
You're gonna wind up paying somebody else and they're not gonna do as
Is
good.
150 per
And so what I would say, David, if we, suppose we said 150 a week, some
Meeting,
weeks here.
a meeting.
Per meeting, will it average out? Would that be acceptable to you, or
Well,
would you
I mean,
rather a different way of doing it?
Or should we find someone to actually do the minutes?
Well, the
And
trouble
pay
is,
them, and the other part is not
It's
as onerous.
hard to do, if you have to transcribe.
if you're not at the
listening.
meeting, I mean, it's just a real pain.
Well, you
in the
can
neck.
go on the TV and look at it.
Yeah. I don't know, a lot of people don't know how to write minutes. I mean, they think that they're writing a transcript of the meeting and not minutes. The minutes and the Freedom of Information Act says what has to be in the minutes, and I think so
It's
does the
actions,
50.
if you
It
could.
says the topics that came up and the actual votes. And the rest of that fluff of who got up and said what and all that detail, I mean, if somebody wants to do that,
And who looked irritated?
well, not to that level of detail, but some, you know, and I'm not being critical of the Board of Supervisors minutes or their clerk, but I'm just saying that should be called Board of Supervisor hours. I mean, they're like 25 pages long, some of them. And, I mean,
That tends to be the norm now, it seems.
Well, it is, I mean, but
If
if-
you read other localities or whatever, that's what minutes are now.
but they're not
It's a
really.
historical record.
But it's not really what we need in as much as we have the video.
That's right.
If you need to go to that, but
Right.
for the minutes.
The
it's just-
minutes are only really, the minutes are the official actions that the board took and who voted for what. What motions were made, and not even who seconded, really, just what motions were made and how the vote came out.
So you don't really capture discussion.
You don't, I mean, I'm a famous one for saying after due deliberation and discussion on motion duly made and seconded, the board approved or disapproved whatever with the following conditions, and that's adequate. But, I'm just saying, so I don't know, it depends on what y'all
I
want.
would say, but for video to be an official record, it has to be sanctioned and controlled by the locality, I believe, and that it can't just be somebody's.
Well, that's the Rappahannock News video, but I'm saying.
No, I know it's theirs, but the county has never really officially said that these, represent an official document.
They're not.
Okay,
No, no.
we're not suggesting that they are.
Anyway.
No, but a lot of localities do that. is what
So
I'm
if you want to
saying.
give me $150 a
Virginia Beach
meeting, it
did
would
it.
be much appreciated and better than what
Actually,
I'm doing
we'll
this-
save an hour of your time just agreeing to that.
Okay, great.
Do we want to do that?
That's on top of my regular pay.
Gary, do you
Is
think-
it on top of?
So it's on top of my regular pay. No, 185.
What if he doesn't come?
You kick me out of $5 and Debbie Kaiser owes me 50
Okay.
besides that.
So, will he get a separate pay for that, or that just gets lumped
It'll
into
be
his?
lumped in.
Let me just clarify what you're doing right now. You're requesting
We haven't
funds
done it.
of the county administrator for his proposed budget, which will ultimately go to the board's proposed budget, and they may or may not approve it.
Just don't tell them who's gonna get it.
You can be an
Oh, yeah,
advocate.
that is a problem.
I could be. If the difference between a tax rate increase and no tax rate increase is $1,800,
Could we have an
I'll
unnamed,
lay it on this decision.
could we have an unnamed employee?
What about last year? I mean,
Just-
it's gonna
I
be
mean-
retroactive that we paid for 2018 for the 7 meetings I did?
See, he really wants to.
So then you don't
start
have enough to
doing-
pay Lockerbie.
What?
Okay, let's not.
Well,
do it.
okay, I'll move for that.
All right, so.
I was gonna say, how
Wait till next
how is the
fiscal-
secretary for the planning commission handled?
Staff is compensated.
It's what?
I mean, but she's stale.
Marlene is compensated.
But then,
Right,
but
but
she's
and
paid
that comes out of
extra.
what fund though? Does that come out of the
She's paid
planning
extra,
commission
yeah.
fund, or is that
She's
just part of
paid
her?
extra.
She's paid out of the, yes, she's paid extra. It's actually in the building inspections.
So it's not per meeting, it's per hour or something
It's
like
just a
that,
lump sum added to her salary.
just related to how many meetings.
No, it's on added to her salary.
Well, would you keep a log of your time?
Do we know how much that sum is?
It's even more work.
It's no old.
It's up to 200.
Oh, you don't know, okay.
I mean, you can kind of look at it like a coaching position in the school systems or whatever, in that it's a, it's a lump sum amount for, but there's no,
Well,
you can't figure the hourly compensation because,
They usually have a meeting each month.
So what's the deal with last year? Am I gonna get compensated
So-
for it?
Why don't we start this in the beginning of the year, starting in January
Of this year or
Yeah.
last year?
of
This
this
year.
year?
I would recommend if you do anything
Well,
about the
there's-
fiscal year.
When's our fiscal year begin?
Yeah, but
July.
then we can't pay Lockerbie.
Yes, you can.
You'd have to ask for more money.
We weren't supposed to hire him if he didn't have the money.
Who did that?
The board.
Well, we could say the same about hiring the secretary.
No, we did have the money for that.
I mean, it would be interesting to know, I mean, there's budgeted amounts, but what have been the actual expenses?
And
over
Michelle and I have talked about that, and so, the wages and salaries are as we are. The advertising, is about, is really about $23.50. But last year, because we had fewer, it was $13.50, am I right about that? So there was a,
But last year was the year ending in 2018, right?
Can you see?
and then with office supplies
What are
stayed
you
the
trying to
same.
look at? It's,
I don't know, I can't
The
see
one
it.
place that,
3,800 for wages, 1,350 for advertising. These are actuals, right?
No. Which, are you looking at the budget amounts?
there is
or-
Column
actual.
H. No, K.
I don't know
No,
what page
M.
you're on. You're on a different page.
Well, I'm on, this came off the county budget.
Oh, not this.
That may came from treasury.
The one place where there's a budgeting is the travel of $1,200
There's a lot.
or $750, and no one's been going in place
Oh, yeah, we could get some of Lockerbie's money out of that.
Or some of mine.
for the travel. Because that's, I don't know that anyone's gone to any meetings
No.
or any conferences
No.
where that would cover the registration for a meeting, the meal, and then the travel.
Okay.
My question on that would be, has the option been presented to the board on any, for conferences or whatever?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Because
From time to time, they don't happen every month.
The LEPD, the land.
What is Chandler's thing?
Yeah.
CPAV or
What is
something.
his school? That
He's done, retired.
he's done.
Oh, that must
But
be
what
why I
was-
never answered my
But
email.
there used to be a place, in Charlottesville where.
No, but what was the name of his organization? It was a teaching boards and zoning
CPAV, I
appeals or
think,
something.
because I took their course when the town of Washington sponsored.
Yeah, I did that
But there was
too.
no travel for them. Now, I have a question for Mr. Curtis since he's here, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but like this advertising budget, we never spend any of it, and the reason is, I was told by Debbie Kaiser at some point, when the last time we visited this topic, was that when they pay our ads, because most of the time, or at least at that time, we were advertising the BZA hearing and the planning commission one time, they were taking all the money to pay the ads out of the planning commission's advertising budget.
Not anymore.
No,
And none-
Caught that one, did you?
They fixed the glitch. Yeah. Okay.
I'll just add one other thing.
It's too bad for
I was only here 70 days before I had to submit the budget last year, been longer, so if there are budget lines that have had no historical spend, they're going away. So if you
Zero.
are asking for some of those lines that haven't had spend in 3 years, you better ask for it.
The slush funds are going away?
When do we need to have the request into you?
February,
February what?
now. This meeting.
Is that right? Yes?
Well,
Okay.
John McCarthy would
Okay.
send, as well as Debbie, would send out
Yeah.
to us advertising that there's something gonna be in Charlottesville or Richmond or this or that about planning, about update, the new updates from the legislature, things like that. And there's the one for the Piedmont area.
They were your secretary.
What?
Those two individuals you named were the BZA secretary.
Well, I never got any information about any of that.
You'll have to get on the list somehow.
I see.
Because, if we do have a
As
new
soon as I start
member.
getting paid, I'll do it.
Yeah, he'll have some incentive. Okay, we still haven't approved his 1,800, have we? Or his 150 a meeting. Is that, let's go ahead.
Starting with.
I move that we
Starting-
budget $150 per meeting to pay our secretary.
And I'd say starting January 1, but we can do it,
you do fiscal year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
why
make it
can't-
retroactive
for
to
the
June.
half of the fiscal year from
The
now.
money's there, right?
You
The
get paid
2,000
to the end of the year anyways, which
We could
So
pay
that you
in
might as well
June,
make it
maybe in
retroactive
June.
to last June,
is not a problem.
right?
So what would it be? No, not there. It would be, there's no July, no
No,
August.
there was no September,
October
October,
and
November.
November.
So there's July,
It was June, July, well, I guess
July,
June doesn't
December.
count. July, August,
December.
August.
and December. It's only 3 months. July,
okay.
Look on your piece of paper there.
Okay, that's
July,
fine.
August,
That's
September,
fine.
three.
For starting July 1 of 2018, $150 per meeting
great.
for the
So
secretary.
it's very likely you will not have enough money to pay Lockerbie, so what are you gonna do about that?
Take it out of that travel budget.
That's not big enough.
Mm-mm.
Well, yeah, but we haven't used all of the 2,000.
Well,
It's only gonna be 1, 2,
it's gonna be $450.
$390.
No. Well, there's, how many,
how can 150 come out to 390?
Oh, I
I
thought,
said $450,
All right, wait a minute, July, August,
December.
July, August,
December,
December, January,
January,
February, March,
March,
April, May, and
assuming
June.
we have meetings.
So it could be a total of 9.
So that would be
That
quick.
would be $1,350, right?
You're asking me? I don't do math
Okay,
in public.
$1,350.
So that'll still leave 7. Well, go ahead and pay him, and if you can't pay me till whenever, so be it. I'll work it out with Lockerbie.
Well, I mean, you're talking about a budget for a year that you've already budgeted.
Well, for,
Yeah, but he's
we're-
gonna
we're-
steal the money. Why don't you just ask for more money for Lockerbie? They'll give him that.
No, but Gary,
You ask.
Gary,
I
what
conveyed
we're
the
talking
message.
about is not for the budget for the next
You have
fiscal
two
year.
issues, you have two issues.
This
One
is,
is the payment going forward into FY '20, including FY '19, which we're in. And the other is how are you gonna pay Lockerbie, which is in FY '19.
I
If
see,
you were to
that's-
not pay a secretary in FY '19, you probably have enough in your budget to cover that cost.
Well, let's just ask them to pay Lockerbie, they'll do that.
Go ahead.
Okay, that was my motion.
So-
I recommend that we ask them to.
And my question was from what budget?
I don't know, we don't get into all that, that's the problem. From the contingency fund.
Well, okay.
The other thing that we don't, that we might be able to look at is we have office supplies, and that's pretty consistently been $750
Of which
a
we have
month.
spent
And
about
so that
$7.50.
is,
It
that's
has never
part
been
of,
spent, that's, that's
So it's never been
looking
spent.
at also, is that those numbers that just go on, you go back 10, 15 years, and it's $750, it's just every year.
is that
There's no
spent or not
accountability
spent?
on that.
But it's postage, it's photocopy, maintenance.
Historically, a lot of these have not been spent.
So can we not, since we have those in place for fiscal year ending 2019, can we not use a couple of them to pay Lockerbie and pay?
Sure,
Our
the math works out, but Lockerbie was what, 2,500?
23 and so.
20. Well, just tell him, we'll just give him whatever's left over after me and tell him we'll pay the rest after June.
Isn't that what we did last time?
Yeah,
We kind of did that last time.
if he
Okay.
doesn't like that, we'll table it.
And that's assuming that nothing comes up between now and the end of June also.
Well, we're
So
going to be behaving ourselves.
Well, I think we ought to have some money for, I don't know, what do you think, Mr. Curry? I think we ought to have some fund for attorney's fees, for things like that when they come up.
See, I thought we had requested 5, I thought the Board of Supervisors put 5,000,
That was a couple of years
but
ago, not in this year.
2019.
But the information that I received from Michelle through email from the chair, you, was that you thought that there should be $5,000 in FY '20 for litigation.
But we didn't do that.
FY '20 hasn't happened yet.
It doesn't get approved yet.
But 19 doesn't have any money for
Correct.
it.
Well, when did I?
And the only reason FY '18 had money is because the board allocated a special appropriation to it or transferred it from
Right.
somewhere.
Oh, wait, that was a typo, it should have said 18. The email. Right?
So where are we on that? I mean, I don't think it should be litigation, I think it ought to be just.
Well, we should have, we
Legal
really
counsel.
should have each
Yeah.
year legal, we should be able to get legal advice without having to beg for the money. Because we need to have someone to advise us.
Besides me.
And we cannot depend upon our county attorney because in the appeals,
he's
he represents.
conflicted.
All logical arguments for a request.
Yes, so.
You go to the
Person
board
may
meeting,
respond
and
to
answer
that.
your-
No, let's, okay, whatever's happened for this year is done, but we have to submit a budget request.
I think that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
So
2
let's-
months ago, right?
No,
Let's
so
get that.
let's put 5,000 in for legal fees.
5? Let's make it
I already
2,500.
did. It's already,
Oh, it's already in?
What's in there?
that's what we're asking for, correct?
That's what I've been
Oh,
told.
that's what I
I'm
emailed.
happy to cut it back.
Okay, 45.
Yeah, but anything that comes up is like, to have to get an attorney to a meeting, this seems reasonable, and that's half of $5,000.
Okay.
Or we have an understanding or whatever that these things could be submitted to the Board of Supervisors and it comes out of the general fund.
Is that
A line of
realistic?
credit.
Is that realistic to?
My message to most budget holders is I'd rather you not budget it as an operational expense, this might happen. And
Yeah,
those
but-
things should come out of the board contingency.
So maybe.
Yeah, but the problem is that, 2308, I think it is, says, among the other specific powers of the board, it says it may hire legal counsel within the funds allocated by the board. So if they haven't allocated it, I mean, technically what we did in hiring Lockerbie probably was a violation of that provision because we didn't have, I didn't know that. I
Did
thought
you
we
get this down,
did.
Chuck?
What?
Did you get that down?
I don't know who made that motion.
That's the headline.
I think I abstained, but anyways. No, but I mean, seriously, that's what it says, so we gotta have something, or we technically can't hire counsel until we first go to the board and say, can we have some money out of some fund to do this? Otherwise, we can't have any counsel.
I can tell you the draft document that I'm working on right now for 20 has $5,000 in it.
Okay.
Good boy.
It does not have $2,000 for the secretary, so I'll.
What happened to that?
And been spent.
But you can still put it in.
Well, we just spent it.
No,
The
he
year
can,
wasn't up, so
Wait,
what are you doing taking it out before the year was over?
he can still put it in.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
God, it was, first time I was zoning administrator, they gave me that budget, and they said, here, and I went, did the same thing you're doing. I said, well, we didn't spend anything there, we didn't do that. Took all that stuff out, and I cut the budget about 20%. And all the other department heads came around and said, what did you do that for?
have we approved your 150?
No, actually, it's a-
There's a motion,
There
was a
pending a
motion.
second.
Is there a
Yeah, I'll
second?
second it.
Oh, you seconded it?
I will second it now.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
Does it include the 5,000, just to be concise?
What year are we talking about?
20.
What 5,000? They're gonna give me $150 starting
The
last
current
July.
motion is 150,
Starting last July, right?
yes.
Right.
Starting last July.
And it's
So
been
this is
seconded.
for fiscal year ending 2019.
I call the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. So we should have an $1,800 or $2,000 budget line for the secretary.
It's in there already.
I thought you said you took it out.
Stop it.
Prospectively.
Okay. Okay, so maybe we better just go down these lines.
Works as a lawyer.
Okay.
Why do you swear him in? For the rest of it.
Okay, so salary of wages, add clerk, so 3,800, is that?
What?
Well, because it's 1,800 for the people and then for secretary, for the members. Because we're coupling the secretary and the.
I'll do the math.
You'll do the math. 38,
12 times 5.
30.
Wait a minute, Mark, wait a minute, my
3,800.
150 doesn't include my 30 for coming to the meeting.
Yeah. No, it's true. So it's 1,800 for the members and 2,000 for the secretary, right?
No.
12 times 150.
12.
Okay, 1,800 for the secretary. Okay, 1,800 and 1,800.
Great.
And that's no raise for
You just
us.
saved money.
No raise for us, I guess.
I thought we could work at 30 for.
Okay, well, I guess we're, now the advertising, this does direct, is something gonna change on that we're gonna have to be paying more?
I don't know,
Well, we
my
increased
question
our
is, they
fees,
get the
haven't we?
fee, the fees come in,
I was
so
gonna say,
this,
we've increased the fees for advertising, right?
where does that go? Where does that
We
show on
don't
the
show
budget?
any income.
On the revenue side.
Where is our?
Well, I mean, so isn't it, well, I guess we have to have
Everything
it.
in this budget has a revenue that balances
I
out.
mean, one thing, we stopped doing this, we stopped doing our ads together with the planning commission, I think, haven't we?
We stopped.
So, yeah, right, so our, I mean, I know that the, because I just did one, it was like, my shock and amazement, it was like $200 per week. So 2 weeks is 400,
But.
and that's if it's only a one, shot, you know, if it's only one application. Sometimes we have,
But it wouldn't add, it wouldn't double
it's
it.
more line, won't double it,
More
but
lines.
I mean, if you have 3 matters coming on, then they add 70 more column inches, and that's how they go by, so.
Yeah, but
we
each
add-
matter has
But
its
but
own
we charge a
time
fee.
fee on it, so
But we
that,
charge
Right,
a
but
fee.
I'm talking about the expense, so
Yeah.
you gotta figure on average, Michelle will cook me if I'm wrong, but I'm gonna say $350 on average per week,
application or per.
per week, so that's $700 a month
I thought you said it was 200 a week.
I think
for
it was
a one-shot deal, so
Right.
it could be, you gotta figure 300 at least, if you might have 2 or 3, so some months are gonna be higher and some are gonna be lower, so figure 250 times
Okay, that's
8,
3,000. Well,
but that's a
no,
week,
times
so
8.
250 is per week.
And then
On
do
average, so
2
that's
weeks.
5, so it's 500 per month, times, I'm gonna guess and say 10, so I'd say the advertising ought to be 5 grand.
And how
But
much
then-
of
but
that
how
is
much
paid by the?
For the fees.
It's all more than that, I think they make money on that, what?
So when the applicants come in and say, all right, I'll give you my fee, none of that goes towards advertising?
It does
It's in
come-
there, but you have to, don't worry about the revenue, worry about the expense.
Can't we
It's
get
okay.
some of that revenue?
Yeah, you're
The extra?
all the expense.
But can't we get the extra? So if we get like 3 applications, don't we get $90 a month?
Okay, so hold on, are we doing 5,000 for,
Just giving you some of your own medicine,
okay, so 5,000 for advertising, does that seem high?
That's gone through.
No, that sounds probably,
What is it
that
now?
sounds reasonable, and if it's not spent, I
What
mean,
is it
if
now?
we don't spend it at the end of the year, it rolls
1350
back over to
was
the
2017.
general fund anyways, right? As long, and you don't want to be way out of the
If
ballpark.
everybody does that, then we raise the tax a penny.
2018 was
We're worth it.
$1,350.
I'm gonna use my,
2017
$150
was
to pay tax.
2350, so we're going to 5,000.
can we do that? Can we just net our pay off our real estate tax?
Okay, I'm not, because I haven't seen that, been privy to that
Okay,
information.
well, it's
that
the
you
same
have.
as what you-
All right, let me give you an example.
What, an example of,
For FY19, there was 1,800 budgeted. As of the end of January,
18
62% was spent.
Budgeted for what?
How much was that?
60?
for what? We didn't say what category.
Advertising, 1,800
Why did we
Was-
drop it so much?
budgeted.
Right?
The percent used as of 1/31/19 was 62%.
And we
Yeah,
had
but we're only
nothing,
halfway through.
but we
the
had
year.
no ads this month, right?
Right?
Right.
Okay.
I'm just giving you something to judge
So
about.
March, April, May, and June, we have a third of the year
So
left.
we're close.
So you were
Yeah, so-
58.3% of the way through the year, and you were 62% spent.
Yeah, and we've had a kind
But
of a
that-
light year.
Does that justify
I
going?
mean, take into account, we had 3 months we didn't have anything. And this month we didn't have anything.
Yeah, but that does happen.
Well, it wasn't happening. I don't know, the county must be saturated with tourist homes.
Okay.
We had a tourist home application for that.
Are we still
6
asking
months.
for office supplies? I was just hoping we just do this.
We are doing it.
Well, we're sort of doing it. Okay, how about, so you've got it all done, so why hold us in suspense? Okay, and then travel, I guess we're,
Yeah, that's, we're at a new time
We
of
make more
that,
if I resign.
but we're gonna have to find out.
And
Don't they send out blast emails advertising local or regional land use? Gosh, they come to mind, I'm gonna,
should we just leave 1,200 in there for travel?
500.
What
It's
is
$750 it's $750
Is of a mind
present
to have training
Yeah,
and seek that out, then it'd be great. But if you're not gonna do it, then it doesn't make a lot of sense. But
so what's,
Maybe there's a school for BZA secretaries. Hopefully in that Virgin Island.
okay, so what do we want to do on the travel?
I think we should bring it down, maybe 800.
500,
800.
800, 500?
Bring it down by that much or
Two.
that?
Two,
that.
two
When
800.
was the last time it was used?
1890.
Let's say 500 and see if we do better.
500 for what?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Travel,
the present budget's got 750 in it, which is down from 1,200. County.
oh, it does, okay.
Budget change.
And that's this year that we're in?
The year we're in right now is budgeted for 750, so I'd say let's leave it at 750.
I thought you just said 500.
See, because we don't know what, you
But
know.
we haven't spent any and he's have to cut it out altogether.
Well, I mean,
What do you have?
quite honestly, I mean, I'm new on the board, but when I've been on boards, whatever, I've always tended to take advantage of those things. I mean, they're educational and help you do your job better. And, you know, if I know about them,
That's why I'm not telling anybody.
So what I would prefer is a dollar request for each of the lines and a rationale. So-
Well, he just gave a pretty good
So as a body, I would like a dollar amount per line
But what
and
do
a
you,
rationale.
what figure do you have in there for this? You
I'd
don't
probably
know.
put it to zero, quite frankly.
I thought it was for if we made some unpopular decisions so that we could leave town, find out something.
And then, okay, so let's get back to that one real quick. How about dues and association memberships? Are we members of any associations?
No, but that's why we didn't find out about these seminars, no.
So we're not paying any due to anybody.
Good, and look at the beautiful work we're doing, so I say keep it that way. And
Well,
take that out.
so, I mean, would we need to be enrolled in a society or something in order to
Let's
collect?
start one, Society of Boards and
Is that
I'm
the
sure there's a state
justification?
board someplace, isn't there?
I mean,
State board for
wouldn't we
everything
need-
else.
Wouldn't we need to be enrolled to actually justify getting dues? Right?
I think so, unless we set up our own.
And so there's no membership of any society we want to join?
For the fourth time, no.
No, cut it out.
Why don't we cut
What,
that
I
out?
heard you the
Yes.
first 3 times.
Yes.
Cut it to
Okay,
zero.
so cut that to 0. Okay, so, there, look at that savings.
BCA slashes
Okay.
annual
But
budget.
I think
Okay.
for travel, we should leave it in probably 750 and see if,
What is our rationale for that since we've been asked? to?
What
because
did we
we may
decide the
have a
first
new
3 times
member
on travel?
on the board and he
I
may wish
wasn't
to go
listening,
to
so
one of
I-
these land use seminars that come out of Charlottesville and Richmond.
Well, okay,
And
so
they're usually supported by Virginia Tech or,
a few years ago, I went to something in,
Gary Light went last year, it's $500.
is that to a school, like
Not
a,
to tech, it was a
yeah.
multi-weekend.
Oh, it is tech.
You go with the first weekend and the last weekend, and then it's
In
online in
between.
between.
in between you've got homework.
It's opening session, homework, closing
So would it
session.
be worth, we contemplate doing one person each year for something like that? At $500? Yes?
To get, this is a certification program. so-
Yeah,
Yeah, like you might even want
That's
to do it.
not,
Okay, so $500.
How did he find out about it?
It's probably a member of a society.
Smoke signal.
And see how much money we save by not
it's the
joining.
LUEP, the land use,
Educational program.
something like, look up LUEP.
Okay, now, let's get on.
Okay,
Right,
yes,
we
sir.
Basketball game or something.
Is that what, okay, so what we're looking at requesting is $3,600 for salaries, that's $1,800 for us and $1,800 for
Whoever the secretary is.
whoever the secretary is. $5,000 for advertising. Yes,
What?
are you okay?
I think that's right now.
So what do you think we should do?
What?
Advertising,
We already did that. 5,000, yeah.
okay. 150 for office supplies, 500 for travel,
Legal was,
and legal was gonna be 2,000?
No, 5.
I don't know, I don't recall.
You're the one who proposed.
No, I proposed 5.
And everybody
And it-
agreed.
Is that in 2020 already? 5?
And deja vu.
Nothing in 2020, that will be adopted by the board in May.
For legal fees, you had penciled in 5,000.
yeah.
Okay.
Starting-
Okay.
That would
Okay.
I'm sure
for-
just paid for one, for one hearing or whatever.
We
so-
only have 3 more months or 4 more months, and then by the time the bill comes in, we'll be in the next fiscal year.
Well, the bill is here.
No, the next bill for
Oh.
something else. Okay, great, we're done with the budget?
Okay, so 5,000 legal fees, 3,600 salaries, 5,000 in advertising, 150 in office supplies, and 500 for travel.
I move the chairman be authorized to communicate all that to the board of supervisors through Mr. Curry.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I hope not.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. And the last one is, I'm not sure what we're specifically talking about here, but the comprehensive plan, and Ron Makala and David Connick have.
where's my notes?
Oh, you know.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, you know, the comprehensive plan was last approved in 2004. And starting somewhere around 2012, which is right on schedule for Rappahannock because they're supposed to review it every 5 years. So Mr. McCarthy started to do some amendments, and they've gone through various iterations. Most of what I saw back in that time frame was not really conceptual, but sort of editorial and correction of typos, many of which would remain uncorrected at this point. Anyway, the Planning Commission finally decided to advertise the 2019 amendment for public hearing, which was supposed to happen last Wednesday. And I personally have some concerns, and when the meeting got canceled, the planning commission's public hearing got canceled due to the weather, I guess Mr. Mackel and I talked about it and suggested that it be put on the agenda so that we can tell our representative what we as a board think about this comprehensive plan. So, as far as I know, they haven't rescheduled their public hearing, but, and I don't know what you or what the board's pleasure is. I mean, I have some specific issues, and I think so do some other people, Ms. Matthews does, I think Ron Mackler does, but, so I don't know if you want to start discussing them in detail, because the question is, I guess it's on the table, is what are we going to tell Mr. Bird to do if and when they have the public hearing, or should we tell him to do something like recommend that they defer the public hearing? So.
And are you saying because it's not complete, or it's not up to date? Or?
Well, if you're asking me, I think it's, first of all, it's got a lot of mistakes in it, which I guess are subject to correction. My primary problem with what we got here is it really isn't substantially different than the 1980 comprehensive plan, which I took the time to go look at. It's, you know, been, it's the exact same framework. It's the exact same, you know, outline. Some of the, and what's been done primarily is finally the Planning Commission updated the statistics that are in it in terms of farm acreage and population and school, people, you know, I guess the number of children in school and so forth and so on. A lot of the statistics have been updated from what was in the 2004 plan, and most of those statistics were 3 or 4 years old. Some of the farm statistics in that plan were from 2002. Some of them only went up to 98. So now they're up to 2012, what's in here, what's in the draft. So they're still, as of right now, at least 6 or 7 years out of date in some areas.
Well, there's some things that don't, that, you know, they can't survey everything every year.
Well,
but there were some things that were in there from 2007, 16, 17, and 18, which I thought were right on.
Well, I mean, the forestry stuff is pretty much up to date. I think it's only a year out. But, so that's one thing they have done. The problem that I have with the comp plan, as it's drafted and going to public hearing supposedly, is the Planning Commission, to my knowledge, has never taken the updated statistics and really discussed what they mean, what significance they have, and whether the plan, because the policy, and which is in Chapter 6, the policy principles and the goals and objectives and how the policies to implement them have not been substantially changed. There's a few minor changes about things like ecotourism is mentioned, and bike paths are mentioned, and cell towers are mentioned, but it's very minor stuff. About 90% of what's in Chapter 6 now is exactly the same, not only as what was in Chapter 6 in 2004, it's exactly the same as what was in Chapter 6 in 1980. And as I look around the table, well, in this board, everybody but Mr. Mackel, I think, has pretty much been here since 1980. And anybody that thinks Rappahannock County today should have the exact same plan as 1980, or that there haven't been like some significant changes in the population of the county and the trends in the county and farming and residential and all that since 1980. I mean, it's 40 years. And there are tremendous changes. And in fact, the statistics that are in the plan that have been updated in this draft, I took a look at them, and if you look at the forestry statistics, which are updated through 2017, there's been like a 2/3 decline in the number of harvests and the amount of trees that have been harvested. Well, what does that mean? I mean, I'm not sure what it means. Maybe it's a statistical aberration, but maybe not. But as you go further, if you look at the cattle herds that are talked about, and you go back and you compare we sort of peaked out around 1998 or 2002, I don't remember exactly. Ask Mr. Jackson, he wrote a good article in his newspaper about it. If you look at it, and then I went to the same place where, I don't know why it's not in this draft, but there are 2017-18 statistics for that same thing from, I think, wherever they get them from, UVA or Tech, I'm not sure. It's the Virginia report, it's something called...
Agriculture.
Yeah. Anyway, I can't remember the abbreviation, but whatever it is that's in there, it's available online for a much later year. It only goes up to 2012 in this draft. If you look at the 2016 or 17 figures, our cattle herds are down by 2/3 also. Our cropland is down by 2/3 also. And that's counting a lot of people who make hay and say they're farmers, even though their land has been taken out of really agriculture use, and it's like in basically a large lot subdivision, but they're still making hay. So they have 20 acres and they're making hay and they're in land use, they file a Schedule F and they get in that census. So I don't think the Planning Commission, another thing, the Planning Commission has never taken the stats that come from USDA, which are based on I think it's called the Census of Agriculture, that if you file a Schedule F in your taxes, you get on that list, and they start sending it. They used to send it to me. I mean, because I reported that I made like 5 acres of hay. So I got a Census of Agriculture. I mean, I'm not in that anymore in the land use thing, but I used to get it, and you fill it out. Nobody verifies that information. A way to verify it would be to go to the Commissioner of Revenue and look at the land use stats and see how many acres we have in land use. But that's not been done. But the stats that they're using, assuming they're accurate, which I think takes a leap of faith right there, assuming they're accurate, they all show in farmland or cropland, in the cattle herds, in timber production and so forth, everything's down by 2/3 since 2002. So something about the comp plan must be askew. It seems like to me, but you can tell me if I'm wrong. I've been in most of the meetings. The Planning Commissions, since that stuff was updated, they've never had a talk about it. Nobody, I don't think at any public meeting till about 5 minutes ago, anybody brought this topic up. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is Chapter 7, which is the future land use plan, is word for word right out of the 1980 plan. They haven't changed one word. It's right over in the clerk's office in the windowsill. Go look at it. It's the same stuff PD9 wrote back then. And it's supposed to have, ask Mr. Curry, because he was actively involved down in Gloucester County when they did their comp plan. The future land use plan should have a map of the county. There's not even a map anywhere in this comp plan of the zoning districts and where they are. The zoning map isn't even reproduced in here. There's
Commercial district, same thing.
there's none of that stuff is in there. But there's no future land use plan. There isn't even the present land use plan. But all right, the purpose of the comp plan is to project out 5 years from now what's going to happen, and that's why you're supposed to review it every 5 years. Just like in communist, Soviet Union, when you get to the end of the 5-year plan, you look back and see, what happened and compare what happened to what was supposed to happen and then adjust the plan accordingly. There's none of that in it. There isn't any future land use plan, so there's nothing really to compare, but there's no plan at all in here for the future. There's no map, there's no nothing. There's just a bunch of gobbledygook about, we'll have a zoning ordinance, word for word. What was it, 1980? We have one. The only thing they changed was the date of the zoning ordinance and the date of the subdivision ordinance. But other than that, it's word for word the same stuff. It's no plan at all. finally, the implementation, how we're going to implement it. It has, again, Chapter 8, exactly word for word what's in the 1980 plan. And my own view is, it's woefully inadequate. I mean, we've had the county, the biggest change in the county is farmland, which the statistics show is disappearing. And land's being taken out of agricultural use and turned into residential use. And yet, our plan doesn't reflect any of that. Our plan doesn't have any, it doesn't say anything about what happens to be the original, or the 1980 and the 1980s plan was to incorporate in our plan what they had in Fauquier, which was clustering and keeping growth around the villages and in the agricultural areas of the county to have cluster growth, where you could take a 100-acre lot and you were allowed to have up to 25-acre lots, so you could have 4 dwelling units on the 100 acres. Well, if you wanted to subdivide it, the cluster idea was you could have 5-acre lots or even 2-acre lots as long as they were all together, and that would eat up 10 acres. The other 90 acres was supposed to be not subdivided. It was supposed to be dedicated to agriculture use. That's the reason.
Michelle, that's being done, is it not? The density?
No, it's not being done, because that's the reason that despite what people think, that Rappahannock has 25-acre zoning. We don't have any 25-acre zoning. We have, in the agriculture district, 2-acre zoning. And in the conservation district, 5-acre zoning. But the density is 1 per 25 and 1 for 50. That's because you were supposed to have clustering. But the subdivision ordinance was never amended to reflect any of that stuff after 1980 or after 1986 when they redid the zoning ordinance. They never did anything to implement any of that stuff that is sort of what was in the, I can tell you what was in the minds of the people who adopted the comprehensive plan back then and the zoning ordinance, but it wasn't reflected anywhere else. I don't know why, because I wasn't involved in it in that time period in the 80s or second half of the 80s and the 90s. I wasn't involved, but it's not written down. It's not in here. What I just said isn't in there anywhere. We got all these exceptions to our subdivision rule, that everything that you've seen go on in the county, Michelle's only been here a couple years. I can tell you, you've been on the commission, Alex was on before you. How many subdivisions came to the planning commission in all the time that you were on the planning commission? Not one. There hasn't been one subdivision as it's defined in the subdivision ordinance that's happened in the county. And yet if you drive around the county, anybody who's been here, you see houses like last month we had this thing about Benvenue Road, and I said, when I first came in 1980, there was about 5 houses on Benvenue Road, and now there's about 25 houses from what I gather on the same place. Nothing's been rezoned, nothing's been subdivided, because the definition of subdivision in our ordinance is so broad, and there's so many exceptions to what is a subdivision, that it's like a meaningless document. Yet, the comp plan has all this beautiful language that we're going to control growth and regulate everything according to our subdivision ordinance and according to our zoning ordinance. Well, it's not working. And so, I mean, the planning commission, in my opinion, really needs to sit down and take a hard look at what their new data is and figure out what they're going to do differently. Because I think they either ought to get rid of the goal of preserving Rappahannock as a rural, wilderness wonderland, and just say that that's just a fantasy and we're just going to become like Culpeper and Warrenton, or if they're really serious about it, do something. And the first place to start is look at what other counties have done. Look at Gloucester. They have about 3 or 4 different rural zones. We have agriculture and conservation. Conservation is defined by slope, not what they really use it for, or not what it really looks like. And it's kind of a mishmash. Agriculture is the whole county except what's in the villages, and the highway commercial in Spurryville and the commercial place out here by the bank. Other than that, the whole rest of the county is agriculture with very minor exceptions. Well, the whole county isn't agriculture. We need a real agriculture zone to put in where we really have agriculture happening. And we need to have a rural residential district of 25 acres where that's the minimum lot size. And maybe we need a rural residential 10. We have a rural residential 5. We have very few places that are zoned RR5 on the map. And a lot of them aren't around the villages. They're out wherever they happen to be when they did the map in 1986. The map hasn't been updated since then. The zoning ordinance hasn't been updated since then. And to me, it's just a real disaster waiting to happen, although it's sort of gradually happening now because land's being taken out of farms, put into residential use, which may or may not be okay. But take Colonel Isles, my favorite example. It was a 1,200 acre working farm and now got all hacked up into 25 and 50 acre lots. Okay, it's got a road through there, never came to the planning commission, never had to get rezoned.
Because it wasn't a subdivision.
Because it's not a subdivision. And yet, a huge chunk of land got totally oriented to a different use than what it was with absolutely no consideration of any of this stuff. And I think that's not something we can allow.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What would you suggest that we're gonna try to do?
Well, I think we ought to instruct our representative to inform the chairman of the planning commission that we think that the comprehensive plan needs substantial reworking, especially to take into account the new statistics and that they plugged in. Because all they did, they plugged them in and left all the verbiage exactly the same. And second, they need to work on chapter 7 of what is the future land plan, use plan, and 8, implementation. One other thing and then I'll shut up. I think we need to take a serious look at land use, because land use taxation is one of the implementing instruments of the comp plan, and I, for one, don't think it's working. I mean, we have all kinds of property in Rappahannock County, that are in land use, that qualify for land use, where they're making hay. Like, take Colonel Isles' old place. I bet every place in that subdivision is in land use, except for the acreage around the houses that they built. And I don't know if there's, how many, 5 or 10, 15 houses back in there now? All those places, because they're still making hay, or it's in woods. And so they're in land use, but they're not really farming. And I think I don't know what the answer is, but Mr. Curry's all worried about, revenues and this and that. If, according to the comp plan, and I didn't bring my glasses so I can't find it, but it's in there, it says something like 80% of the county's in land use. Even
Could well be.
Well, yeah, but 80% of the county is not being used for agricultural purposes. Instead of having some guy cut the grass, instead he rolls it up in hay bales and, to me, that's not farming.
But in Falk here, don't they have a category of just open space?
Yep, they do, and we don't. We did, for whatever reason, we didn't put that in. That's something else that should be looked at. I'll tell you another thing, the Fauquier, and I sent it to Michelle, and I sent it, I think, to the board. I know I sent it to the Planning Commission. Fauquier County has a whole chapter of their comp plan, I think it's 42 pages long, just on preserving rural land. And some of the policy goals sound a lot like ours, but for example, they have a provision in there that every subdivision has to do a hydrological, if I pronounce that right, test to demonstrate before they get approval that they're not going to impair water rights of existing properties or affect the aquifer and all that stuff. Rappahannock County paid for, I guess they paid for it, I don't know, in 2011, a water plan or a water review that was done by Tim Bondelin down there, who used to work with Beverly Hunter in Rapflow. He did this giant report. It's a chock-a-block full of information, including the zillions of gallons that they guesstimated we use for all our residential uses, which P.S. the comp plan compared to Fauquier has no statistics on how many new houses we've had in the last 15 years or 5 years or any years, and where they are. Faulquier's preservation of rural land says, here's what we got, here's how much we could have under the current zoning, how much the build out is, and an analysis of it. We don't have any of that. We don't know where people are building in agriculture or rural residential or in the villages. We don't know where our population is growing, or we don't know where buildings are being built. We have no analysis whatsoever of that, and no analysis of things like the water. I mean, all these people are coming in and building these ginormous houses, like, you know, take for example out on Marshall, 647. I mean, that Taj Mahal used to be a single-family residence. How much water do you think it's using? And if everybody keeps on doing that, you know, you can keep on punching holes in the and drawing water out, only but so much till it's going to really impact everybody. We have no plan. Alex is on the Water and Sewer Authority. You know, it says in here, it's got the same stale, word for word.
We have no plans.
That they have no plans for any capital stuff. I don't know if that's true. Did they ask you, did you get a letter from the planning commission saying, hey, Water and Sewer Authority, do you have any plan? No, they just copied it word for word, not only from the 2004 plan, but from all the ones back to when they opened it in 1986. Those same 3 sentences are in there word for word. Same thing about teacher salaries, word for word. Even though the statistics are altogether different now, they have the same exact language in there. And you go through it, you know, category after category. This water study is mentioned in one paragraph, but what about the future land use plan? Where is there any connection between what a study that the county published in 2011, which according to my math is like 7 years after this comp plan that they're changing? Where did they, and one of the recommendations was they have to monitor all this stuff because it could become critical. Well, has there been any monitoring since 2011? To my knowledge, no. They took the report and they said, thank you very much, Tim, for doing a fine report, put it on the shelf, and there's nothing about it. There's no analysis of that situation. There's no new data for the last 8 years. And how can you call that a comprehensive plan?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Ron, you have some thoughts?
Yes, and my thoughts basically are on just going right to the basic of 15.2-2223, which the state establishes the fact that localities have to do a comprehensive plan, and it's sort of a checklist. And there's a lot of shells in here, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you go through our plan and you start trying to do a checklist thing, and it's missing all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not in there, and to me, it tends to deal. I use the phrase vistas, view sheds and vistas and flora and fauna, and that tends to be what the whole plan about that in agriculture is. What the whole plan's about. There's really very little mention of people in there, and they allude to like how it's cluster housing and stuff like that, but you can't just do cluster housing. I mean, it's got to be in appropriate areas, and if there, you know, if there's not sufficient water or ability for sewage, then there has to be, you know, there has to be planning for, you know, for that end of the operation or whatever. And that's what, if you look at everybody else's comprehensive plans, I mean, they're, you know, it's important to do that, because then you look at ours and you go, there's nothing there. You know, you look at other people's, they have all these pages of goals and strategies. I think there's like, was it Orange County's is like 15, how many pages was it? It's a lot of pages, but anyway, of just goals and strategies, what we need to do and how we're going to do it. You don't have any of that. And one of the biggest things I see, because it has come out over the last 2 years from that group that you don't like,
Which one?
The forum, is that one of the biggest problems we have in this county is that we don't have young people, and we don't have young people because we don't have affordable housing. And I read through 102 pages of our comprehensive plan, and the 2 words, affordable housing, appear nowhere in the plan. Affordable housing, there's a housing section, but affordable housing is not even mentioned. And that's, and so, same thing with social services. That's something else that a lot of the other counties deal with in their plans. We don't deal with that, and we've got the same problems they do. It just came out in the paper, and that's what it's about. It's about the future of the land, but it's also about the future of the people that live there, and we don't deal with the future of the people that live there. And it's sort of taken us down a road to nowhere, because there is no, like I said, there's no plan, there's no map, there's nothing. It's kind of going someplace, but no one knows where it is, so it's not a plan. And it doesn't meet, like I said, it doesn't meet the code. And I don't know what I actually tried to find out, and I can't find out, and it's one of those things where, if you don't meet the code, it doesn't make any difference. I don't know, there's no punishment involved. But there's a lot of stuff in here. The transportation plan refers to, there and maps and all that. And if you don't have your own, then you use the VDOT 6-year plan or whatever, and it's supposed to be in there. And that's not in there. And it just doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't do whatever, all the localities around us, the citizens there are getting way more information in their comprehensive plans than we are.
Okay. Jennifer, you have some thoughts?
Yes, I do. I was concerned about, on the electronic draft, page 48, about development patterns, and they talked about stores. And I think that they need to better define what a general store is. They say,
Yes, I totally agree.
and versus a convenience, versus a convenience store, because they're talking every village has a general store. That's not true.
The tables are fictitious. They're, it's got like 9 clothing stores or something, and it's like,
Because a general
They
store,
sell hats at Long.
a convenience store has nabs and colas and beer and some stuff like that, where you conveniently can go in, grab something and go back out. And that's what is in Chester's Gap, with Flint Hill and so forth. We had a nice, not a gourmet, but a upscale, nice food store in Flint Hill. And it was a struggle for that woman to continue her business there, and she had to move on because she didn't get the one word that if you could do a word search, you would find the word "and support" 100 times in the comprehensive plan. To do something with agriculture and support, it's put something other and support, and I don't know how that support comes forward. Anyway. What is not spoken to is that Rappahannock County is a food desert. We are a food desert. We may have the most expensive dining place in the United States, just across the street here. But when it comes to being able to go and get the typical ingredients and something for supper or breakfast or lunch from a store, it doesn't exist in Rappahannock County. You could do it a little bit at what was called the Mary Moo. I think she's changed her name now. She's moved to another place. And you can get it at Thornton store over here. But still, other than that, those 2 places, there wasn't that. Then a couple of things that I think were misconstrued was page 60 says Belmead indicated it was a full-time school. It's not. It's a tutoring school, a camp school where they tutor with math.
I thought they had school during.
Montessori school.
They have a
Yeah.
Montessori school?
Yeah.
But I did not know that. Okay. There was a lot of thoughts about water issues and quality, but it's not as much as what we should have information about. And then starting on page 79 is more about zoning, and then page 87, they added a goal 11, and they add it spoke to serve the youth and families of Rappahannock County. And let me tell you, we need to be doing that, but we also need to be serving the elderly of Rappahannock County. And I don't know if it was David or Ron, I guess it was David. Ron talked about the youth, but we also need to be doing something about the elderly. And I've been on a couple of the committees and so forth, and then everybody's enthusiastic and then falls apart. We do have the organization with the benevolent fund, and that's certainly should be lauded. It's a great place. Page 89, discourage ridgetop development. I agree with that, but I think that there needs to be some more information about the ridgetop developments. I think that they should be required conservative lighting, because you drive down there and you just see these bright lights at the top of the ridges. I don't care about looking at the bright lights at the top of the ridges. And they need to have the bright lights dimmed, but have it in alignment with the dark sky and the night sky movement that rises and falls a
I
little
want
bit.
to just amplify one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to catch your breath. You know, talking about that ridgetop development, it says that in the comp plan. It said that in 2004, and I think it said it in 1980 about ridgetop development. But guess what?
It's never been enacted.
Because there's no corresponding provision in the zoning ordinance anywhere that says anything about it. If you're in a conservation zone, okay, you have a different density requirement and a different lot size, but you know, Yoko's sitting here, go up Clark Lane, drive up to the top of Clark Lane. There's a house right on top of the ridge. Their house isn't right on top, but it's down below, and I mean, they didn't build it, so but all that stuff has happened since 1980, and that's just Clark Lane. Go down to Bob Bridges, the old place there on, what's that on, Get Brown Hollow Road, and drive up there. Behind Quiver Line, there's all houses right on top, all this ridgetop development has happened, even though it's not in the comprehensive plan. Well, how did that happen? Because there's absolutely nothing, none of the, even though if you flip to chapter 7 or chapter 8 that says implementation, says, oh, the zoning ordinance is going to be the vehicle by which we implement it. Okay, but has the zoning ordinance ever been updated since 1980 to say, if you're, I mean, I'm not sure what a ridgetop, I mean, I know, but I mean, a ridgetop is, you know, something like pornography, like what's his name said in the Supreme Court. I know what it is. I'm not sure how to define it, but I know it when I see it. Well, ridgetop, same thing. I mean, what ridges are ridges? Are the ridges that we're talking about? I mean, I live on top of a hill, but it's really the base of Red Oak Mountain. But is that a ridgetop? I don't know. I guess it depends on if you're below it or not. It could be. Is that a ridgetop? I mean, what are the ridges that we're talking about? The Blue Ridge or subordinate ridges, or up there on where Pat Saltonstall lives? There was some ridgetop development happened after 1980.
And it's a big one.
I mean, you could go around Ron Maxwell's house. There's another one. I mean, I don't want to pick on people, and I'm not picking on them because they didn't do anything wrong. The fact of the matter is we've had tons of ridgetop development all over the county. Why? Because they come in the zoning office and say, I'm putting a house up. And they put in for a single family residence. Well, it's permitted by right. There's setbacks from the lot lines, and that's it. There's nothing about ridgetops. There's not even a question on there. Are you at or near a ridgetop? Whatever the heck a ridgetop is. So Michelle has no way to tell them, hey, you know, you got to build so many feet away from the ridge or whatever is the ridgetop. There's absolutely no implementing provisions anywhere in the zoning ordinance for stuff like that. And if you go through the policies, and I mean, when you read it as just a sort of average, I guess, person, you know, it all sounds great. But when you read it as a zoning administrator and someone who has been the person who's on the spot that has to, you just look at it and say, how, and that's the way I still read it, how am I supposed to do that?
I believe that there needs to be exact definitions, or as close as we can get to exact, on what ridgetop is, on what dark skies are, on what artificial lighting. Probably about 10 years ago, there was a whole hullabaloo in the county about the lumens and the lighting and so forth, as well as noise, because thinking a lot and reflecting a lot about the Bend the New Road, knowing what it's like having those diesel engines starting up and going 12 hours a day, it's unbelievable. When there was another store beside us in Flint Hill, they would come in and park and unload for a true little general store. It just, after a while, it just can drive you crazy. But principle 3 on page 91, statements about the night skies, dark skies, use of appropriate artificial light, all that needs to be enforced, especially with that ridgetop stuff going on. And there's a lot in there about the old landfill, and this is just a editorial, I think we should call it the former landfill.
Well, that's some more stuff that was copied from
Yeah,
back in
and
the 80s.
because I mean, we did use it, but it's a former landfill, it's not quite abandoned, because I assume that they are still monitoring, because they were supposed to monitor for X number of years after that. And there was information in there about land use tax relief. In recent years, and I may not be exact about this, but the first responders, the rescue squad folks, and the fire departments, don't they receive some sort of tax relief as a thank you as a payment for them doing what they do? Don't they get some sort of tax relief? Because I remember seeing in the newspaper, if you're a first responder here in the county, you must get these papers done. Sharon Dotson was putting that out.
I believe it's a $25, it used to be the sticker.
No, I thought it was something
I
about,
think it's $600. It's codified, and it doesn't belong in your land use document.
okay, that doesn't belong in? Okay, well, I
But it
just,
is very clearly in your ordinances, which is where you look.
okay. All right, and then the other thing about the open space, and that was mentioned over here, and then I think once in the document, maybe the same paragraphs, the word was used twice, traffic calming. I think that we need to slow the traffic down across the county, and there needs to be better understanding among locals. Sometimes it's the locals who are flying through these small towns at exorbitant rates of speed, where people can appreciate what that by them going fast and having their cell phones, well, but the windows down and blasting their music, and then the motorcycles they're on walkie-talkies or something like that, and so the one in the front and 50 of them back behind them, they're all hearing the same thing. When that comes through small towns, that just gets amplified as it's moving through, and you're listening to these conversations, and then it's all this music plus the roar of the engines. So I think that we need to be looking to look and do something about the traffic calming, which has occurred in some of our surrounding neighboring counties, and then the housing.
Okay, so a quick question, Chris, you got all this?
I do, and
That's good.
what
So what would you
seems to
think we
me
could do?
is, you remind me of a saying that if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass on the ground every time he jumped. And you're expecting something out of the Board of Zoning Appeals and the
You mean
Planning
the planning,
Commission that really isn't there. And that it seems the situation we find ourselves in now is we are something like 12 years overdue for a...
You being the planning commission.
15, yes.
Okay, many. And so that basically the process which began 2 or 3 years ago in terms of updating the last comprehensive plan, it would seem to me, given that we are at somewhere like the 96th or 97th percentile of getting this one done, oughtn't to be curtailed before it's done, and then a brand new workover should be planned from a strategic point of view as opposed to a tactical point of view. And that I happen to completely agree with most of what you have said.
But Chris, what I want to ask you is this. First of all, the only requirement is that it be reviewed every 5 years. And John McCarthy one time said, about 4 or 5 years ago, when someone asked about deferring the complaint, he says, well, as long as you take it off the shelf and blow the dust off it and flip through it, you've reviewed it. It doesn't say you have to amend it it says you're supposed to review it to see if it needs to be amended. Well, yeah, it needs to be amended, but that review, you just now, despite all of what you said, you just now in the last 6 months got all this new data, some of which is still to 2012. Like, look at, I mean, I don't know, I just happened to flip to this. Residential building permits, and it's got a beautiful table, 5.6, on what looks like 56, page 56, and it tells you the number of building permits every year. And my question is, what does that tell you? I mean, as a zoning administrator, what the hell does it tell you? I don't know where they are. I don't know if they're in the villages. I don't know if they're in the conservation. I don't know if they're ridge tops.
The ridge
or
tops.
if they're, I don't know where they are. It doesn't tell you anything that you need to know if you're going to develop out of that data. I mean, this reads like, one of these things, that the Encyclopedia Britannica of Rappahannock County. Like if I was doing a book report or something, or I had to do a school report on Rappahannock County and tell all these fun facts to know and recite to the class, it'd be great. But in terms of giving me the data that I need or Michelle needs or the board of supervisors, I don't know, to develop a policy, it's just a bunch of facts and figures that aren't connected to anything.
Well, and here's some other data that you were referring to, and I've got the chart right here, which makes no sense at all. It's got general merchandise stores, there's 8 of them in Rappahannock, sporting goods stores, hobby box, music shops, 7, clothing and clothing accessory stores, 10, gasoline stations, 9, food and beverage stores, 8. I mean, none of that. Why is it in there? It's not.
It seems quite apparent.
Because it was in there before.
A huge renovation needs to be done.
But when is that going to happen?
Yes,
If it hasn't happened up till now, what's going to make it
Okay, so
happen?
hold on. Why don't we recommend that they do more work on this and bring it more up to date rather
Who
than...
is actually writing it?
Nobody.
Well, it's the chairman or the planning commission is responsible.
The way the thing was done, and David, you were a considerable part of it, was about 2 years ago, there was an effort made to review the comprehensive plan. It happened during the late winter, early spring, and there were meetings
In the fire station.
around to try to encourage as
Yeah,
much
input.
resident involvement as possible. There was some, but generally 5 people coming to a meeting was a lot. A very significant part of the planning commission never went to those work meetings either, because if they had regular jobs, they were off doing their regular jobs somewhere else. And so that that was the level of revision, imagination, and effort made. And then once that had been done and notes and scribbles added to the existing plan, it went nowhere. It went nowhere for 2 years because there was no provision for transcribing and finishing it. And so, as I said, it languished for about 2 years after that, and only finally, I think all of this has happened since Michelle has been zoning administrator.
That's another change. Get your name off the cover.
The thing was typed up, and at least what had been begun was finished. And that's kind of where we are right now.
But it doesn't meet the code.
It doesn't meet anything. It has always been, it likens to me, floating downstream, pushing off with a pole whenever you get close to something you don't want to run into in the boat. And so that no real effort has been made to replan, to articulate where the community is going and how it's going to get there. And I think in some ways this is happening because nobody really wants to think about that. It's a kind of frightening and threatening idea.
Yep.
It is a job for professionals in this day and age. It's not a job for people that are just like yourself. You don't, I mean, people have degrees in planning. That's why they have them. It's a very involved process, but what's becoming very obvious here is that it's a very involved process, and we aren't capable of doing it.
Haven't even started. And I agree.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is, how do you decide what to plan for? This has got to be voted on and supported by the local population.
Okay, but my recollection of those meetings, and it says so in the plan, that part's been updated. I think it says 68 people attended all the meetings altogether. But it says, well, there's a general consensus that the principles are, everybody's on board with them. But the problem that I see, I mean, if you want to preserve agricultural land, then you have to have specific policies, which are kind of onerous. That first of all, agricultural land is going to be reflected for real in the zoning map, not pick out all the other zones and like conservation, highway commercial, village residential, and whatever's left is agriculture. Well, because that's how they did it. Because I was there when they did it, when they made the maps. So that's how it was done. And that's how it was done before that, by George Davis. So they never really, had a plan of what's going to be where. But if you really want to do that, you have to you have to change significantly what's in the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance and tighten things up. Like this thing about building permits. You don't know what zone, it doesn't even tell you what zone they're in. And until you get that level of, in other words, if you had a chart that said in 2002, 50% or 80% or whatever, Fauquier's done it, of the building permits were in the agriculture zone or some were in the village zone, you'd see, we're having, because in Fauquier they say only 30% of the residential development's been in the agriculture, the rural zones. What do we know? We don't know anything. We have no data on that. It's not in the plan, and I mean, I guess you could go ferret out the data from the Commissioner of Revenue, but no one's done that. No one's even been assigned to do that because no one on the Planning Commission said, hey, this is the outline of what the data we have to make a rational decision about where we're going. So our plan amounts to, not what you said, our plan should be titled, the Yogi Berra Plan, Comprehensive Plan. If you don't know where you're going, you're liable to end up somewhere else. Because that's what it is. If you want to limit development in the rural areas, you have to have provisions, strict provisions about sanitation. Like if you're going to have more than 5 lots, you got to put in, you can't have septic systems, you're going to have to put in a sewage treatment plant. You're going to have to do, like Fauquier says, a hydrological, survey. And that stuff costs money. And that's really how you stop development. You make it expensive. You make it time consuming. You make them go through a rezoning. You make them come to the Planning Commission, and the planners sit around and say, well, it looks to me like you're going to use, 5 zillion gallons of water. You did it to Cliff Miller when you did his golf course. You made him supply a hydrological thing of how much water he was going to use to water the grass on the golf course. But the Colonel Lyle thing, you put in how many? 25 houses? I don't know how many houses are back there. You put in all those houses without any review to see what the impact would be. And no review about the road, no road, there's nothing. And the whole county's going to be hacked up just like that. And that's just what's been happening for the last 25, 30 years. The whole county is being hacked up into little lots and without any review by anybody. But if you want to stop that and you really want to preserve farmland and you really want to preserve agriculture and the rural character there, you're going to have to put some provisions in there with some teeth and not make everything that everybody wants to do an exception to the subdivision ordinance. So you don't need to, I had to talk with Michelle. How many, before you got there and started keeping a track of it, is there a book of how many subdivisions were approved or lot plats were approved?
There's a few fouls.
Huh?
There's a few fouls.
Well, I didn't do it, and to my knowledge, neither did John McCarthy. There's no record of it because it's technically not a subdivision. And there used to be, there wasn't even a fee to review the plat, so there was no money, there's no paper trail at all of it, except going through every deed in the courthouse.
Okay, now.
And they're, just one of the things, they're also, I mean, we're looking at preserving all this farmland, but are we gonna have any farmers? Because that's part of the problem also, and it's, you know, for the thousands of acres of farmland we're trying to preserve, it's the large farming companies now that come in and do that. It's not the local people. I mean, that's where it's going downhill, and that the families around here. I mean, the kids, they don't want to be a farmer.
Sounds like we understand what the problems are, but I don't know about.
Well, those problems should be in there, but there also have to be solutions.
So what can we do tonight?
What can we do tonight? We can recommend that
Recommend that
the
they table
plan be tabled
it for more work.
for more work, yes. I mean, it's, why pass something
Yes.
that, you know, just to say, well, we're gonna pass this and then we're gonna start to redo it again immediately or whatever. Well, then-
Okay, so why don't you make a motion?
All right, I'll make a motion that we instruct our representative, or either, well, I don't know, let's discuss that. Should we tell him to do it?
We'll request it.
Well, wait a minute, because if we give it to Chris, no, I'm just not talking about you versus Alex, but right now, as I understand it, the meeting got canceled, so I don't know if they're gonna re-advertise, or I don't know if they're gonna wait for the next planning commission to decide what they're gonna do. So I don't think we should wait and assume that it can wait till the meeting, because maybe they're just gonna go ahead and reschedule their public hearing. I think they shouldn't have a public hearing. So I think it ought to come from the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals to the chairman of the Planning Commission to say that we discussed it, we reviewed it, there's a whole bunch of issues, and we recommend that they not reschedule the public hearing until they address some of these issues. So that's my motion, that the chairman write a letter to
And offer them
and give them some of these.
the video.
Well, no, we'll write up something, we'll make a little list and try to include some of the things that everybody talked about, and let him sign it and send it to the chairman of the planning commission and see what he does, and to the and copy it to the members, and see what they decide to do.
And there was a second to that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
I think that the board of supervisors ought to have a copy too,
Okay.
because, I mean, it's.
Yeah, might as well send a copy to them too. I mean, they're obviously the final
Yeah,
vote
let's-
on it anyway, so.
Give everybody an opportunity to ignore us.
Okay. That's enough discussion, I guess. All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Okay, that's
there's
good.
another $150 on that to help from.
Okay, I think that completes our business, correct?
I move to adjourn.
All in
I'll
favor?
second.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
This-